So this is my good friend Izzy. He has a Christian platform just like me, and we're talking about the book of Exodus today. So do you want to introduce yourself a little bit and get all that good stuff out?
You say the book of Exodus?
Oh, did I? Um,
Yeah,
Enoch.
yeah.
I think I did actually. The book of Enoch. Yeah, we're gonna talk about is the book of Exodus biblical, guys. That's a hard
I was like,
question.
what? What live stream did I join again?
Surprise!
Yeah, my name is That Christian Nerd. I go by Izzy as well. I used to go by Izzy the Nerdy Christian, and I changed my name a little while ago. Yeah, I'm a biblical studies major. I'm currently in my sophomore year of university, and I talk about all sorts of different things. So I defend the Christian faith. I talk about Christian theology. I have a biblical study series, and I also talk about nerdy sort of things too, like anime, movies and TV shows, gaming, and a bunch of other things. So if any of that interests you, yeah, definitely follow me on TikTok, and you can check out my other platforms as well because I have long form content and short form content on my other platforms that I do not have on TikTok.
Mhm. Nice. So let's get into this topic. So the first question I have is, what really got your interest on this topic? Why do you specifically decide to look in the Book of Enoch and all that good stuff?
So when I was in eighth grade, I had a lot of different things happening at once that were challenging my faith. But one of those things was that we had a family friend who believed that the Book of Enoch was scripture and told us that the church or something tried to hide it from us. And then furthermore, that it spoke the truth about aliens and UFOs. So I remember naively, right, going through my Protestant Bible and
Uh,
seeing, oh no, there's only 66 books in here, and the Book of Enoch is not one of them. And then telling my mom and stuff. But I wasn't really satisfied with the fact that it
yeah.
wasn't here. Like, I want to know what is she going on about? So that launched my research into the canon of the Bible, or the books that make up the Bible that we have, and specifically with the Book of Enoch. So I have been reading this and studying this text and Enochic tradition as a whole since eighth grade, and I'm now a sophomore in college.
For quite a bit of time.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. So how about you give us like the gist of the book? What's in the book? Um, what makes up it? All that good stuff.
Yeah, so first Enoch is typically called Ethiopian Enoch because it's the Ethiopian church is the only church that views this text as inspired. Uh, and it is, we have a full manuscript of this work in the Ge'ez language, which is the language, the main language of Ethiopia, as far as I understand. Uh, so that's so if you hear the phrase like Ethiopian Enoch or one Enoch, that's what it's referring to. And that's the book specifically we're going to look at today. So this book claims to be written by the biblical character Enoch, which you can find reference in Genesis 5, 18 to 21, Jude 14 through 15, and Hebrews 11, 5 through 7. The text of 1 Enoch is considered by scholars to date from about 300 BC to 50 AD is pretty much the range. And it talks about a lot of different things. Its main concerns, though, is uh, judgment, the end times, the Messiah, the fall of the story about the fall of the Watcher angels, and the flood, which also entails, of course, like I said, judgment, oncoming destruction, that sort of thing. Astronomy is also present in the book as well, and we could
Yeah.
possibly get more into that. But yeah, so those that's sort of the themes and sort of the background behind the book.
Interesting. Yeah, I was reading a little bit today. I didn't finish it just yet, but it was a very interesting read. Like what you're saying, a lot of astrology stuff. Also a lot of strange stuff about giants. So maybe you could go a little bit more depth in that and their perspective on Genesis 6, because it's a little bit Interesting.
Yeah, so for those who do not know, Genesis 6, 1 through 4 talks about three different groups: the sons of God, the daughters of men, and the Nephilim. I would encourage you guys to read Genesis 6, 1 through 4. It's definitely going to be relevant if you get into a discourse about the book of Enoch. But in this, some have interpreted Genesis 6, 1 through 4 to mean that these sons of God are these divine beings, these angels who have mated with the daughters of men, with women. And so the children born from them are the Nephilim or the giants. And this is how the Book of Enoch seems to understand this story. If we assume that the Book of Enoch is actually trying to interpret Genesis 6, 1 through 4, excuse me, which is a interesting discussion in and of itself, but we can get more into that possibly later. But let's assume for now that's the case. It's interpreting Genesis 6, 1 through 4 as this being the case. So the first chapter 6 through chapter 36, so these 30 chapters, all are mainly focused on the fall of these watcher angels. So according to the text, it is specifically watcher angels that agreed to come to earth to get wives and to teach secrets to humanity. And yeah, from their offspring are giants. And to add to this, in the Book of Giants, which is not in the Enochic text, but was written around the same time and was also found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, like the Book of Enoch was, which are just a collection of manuscripts that we have found about various different things from a particular geographical area.
Hmm.
But in the Book of Giants, it actually expands even further on this idea, so that it's not just watcher angels mating with women, but they also mate with animals. And
Hmm.
so in the Book of Giants, you have giants who exist, but you also have monsters that exist as well. Now, that is going beyond the Enochic text and certainly beyond the biblical text, but that is one of the ways, too, that this tradition about this angelic fall was understood. So, yeah, that's sort of the main section of the book. So, yeah, it is seeing the Nephilim in Genesis 6 as a reference to giants. I currently disagree. Um,
Really?
yeah, so you can check
Like,
out Inspiring Philosophy on YouTube. He has a video interpreting Genesis 6, 1 through 4. I'm not fully on board with his interpretation either, but as far as I can tell from the data that we have, the term Nephilim, the Hebrew term, probably means fallen ones, and uh, the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament that was created around 100, 200 BC, that is the text that uses a Greek term that we translate into English as giants. It uses that term for the Nephilim, the Hebrew term. So I think that this whole confusion of whether or not giants are in this passage is more of a translation error than it is proper biblical theology. But
mhm.
I could be wrong. I know that great scholars have obviously disagreed with me. Dr. Michael Heiser, present,
Yeah.
a scholar who passed away, of course, hope he rests in peace. But
Yeah.
he heavily used Enochic tradition and argued for a more Enochic understanding of Genesis 6. Many church fathers held to that. Justin Martyr seems to be influenced by Enochic tradition, my favorite church father. You also get the usage of it later on. So it's definitely a valid interpretation within the tradition of the church. I just currently do not hold to it because of that reason and a couple other reasons. Well, I think that Genesis 6 is the entire passage is talking about human beings. So the daughters of men are obviously women. I think that the fallen ones, they're explicitly called men of renown, right? So I think that they're men. Uh, the judgment upon humanity in Genesis 6, like the charge that God brings against people in Genesis 6, is the violence that humans, that men are committing upon the face of the earth. So, regardless of how so this is just my view currently, based upon the literary features of Genesis 6. Um, Whatever is going on, even if the sons of God are divine beings, the passage as a whole is dealing with human beings and divine beings. If you want to see the sons of God as divine beings, are going to be dealt with later. To Christ X
Mhm.
Comics comment, I wouldn't necessarily say that the sons of God are a part of Seth's lineage. I don't think that the text indicates that. Um, so I would say that if you wanted to, and on a good hermeneutical grounds, you can argue that the sons of God are divine beings, but just that the daughters of men and the offspring born to them, again assuming that they do have offspring, uh, are humans. And then the divine beings, the angels, get dealt with later. And maybe you'll quote from Jude, you'll quote from Second Peter 2, talking about these angels that are in gloomy darkness until the judgment. And so that's if I were to say the sons of God are divine beings, that's where I would go. I think the phrase "sons of God" in Hebrew, the B'nai Elohim, the sons of the gods, is literally what the phrase means in Hebrew. And I certainly think Dr. Michael Heiser, for example, has made a very good case, and you can make a good case that these are divine beings, part of a sort of a divine council. um, if you read my paper I did about suffering in the book of Job, I certainly see the sons of God in Job as divine beings. They're not humans. Um,
Uh-huh.
so I certainly think it's possible. I would just disagree overall with the Enochic sort of view of the text. I don't think giants are plausibly there.
Yeah. So no tie in real life, that kind of thing.
No Attack on Titan. No. Thank the Lord.
Oh, darn. It's Miami. Hmm.
10-foot aliens in Miami. No.
So another interesting thing. So another thing that's kind of popular to talk about is the kind of idea of the seed of the Messiah in the Book of Enoch is like Enoch. So how would you kind of talk about that or relate it to what we see in the Old Testament?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear in the book of Enoch that uh, the book is attempting to discuss the messianic figure who is this sort of end times figure, and
Mhm.
it's revealed to be Enoch himself. And the reason why we think this is because of chapter 71, where basically chapters 37 through 71 are several chapters dedicated to three different parables that Enoch tells. And all three of these parables, the Messiah is sort of the main focal point of the parables, and uh, the the um, the point of the parables is to explain the end times and to explain where the Son of Man or the Messiah fits into that. So he's the Messiah is variously referred to as the chosen one, the anointed one, the Messiah, the Son of Man, and a couple other names. So chapter 71 begins this climactic discussion of the Messiah. It is the last chapter really discussing this topic. It is the end of the three parables. And so it climaxes in 71. And this is evident in the text. Um, uh, Enoch begins to see Michael. These are archangels in the text, but or I believe Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Phanuel are all angels in the text and are all archangels specifically. Yeah, this text has some interesting things to say about angels. We can get into that later. But and so these angels and many more without number come to Enoch after with the head of days, quote unquote, who is supposed to be God. He sees him, he's sort of indescribable. Enoch falls on his face, and it describes it. The text describes Enoch as something odd is happening to him. He falls on his face. The text says his body melts, and the spirit was transformed. He cries aloud in exaltation of God and these sorts of things. So all the angels are there. God himself is there. He's
Mhm.
something is happening to him. And the text says at the to climax this, uh, and that angel came to me and greeted me with his voice and said to me, you are the Son of Man, who was born to righteousness, and righteousness remains over you, and the righteousness of the head of days will not leave you.
Mhm.
So based upon literary grounds, I've been harping this point, but chapter 71 is the climax of this discussion regarding the Messiah, and it indicates that Enoch is the Messiah. That is the climactic reveal. Um, Another literary point to make is that this verse here, chapter 71, verse 14, is very, very similar to, excuse me, to chapter 46 verses 2 and 3. There the son of man is not identified yet. Excuse me, but the Son of Man is described in the same way that Enoch here is described in 71.
Yeah.
So based upon the literary context, we can argue pretty conclusively that Enoch is meant to be identified as the Messiah. Now, one thing I'll quickly point out is that if you read the translation that was made by R.H. Charles, he will translate this phrase as "This is the Son of Man," rather than "You are the Son of Man." Now, obviously, that changes the meaning of the text. Uh, if it's "This is," then that means that Enoch gets to see who the Son of Man is, but obviously his name is not dropped or anything like that. But it's not Enoch under the translation R.H. Charles gave. However, Enochic scholars have, it seems, pretty unanimously rejected R.H. Charles's translation. I would encourage you to see the scholars that are quoted by David Wilbur. Um, he has some good content on the Book of Enoch on YouTube, and a article where he quotes numerous scholars like James Vanderkamp, like top Enochic scholars, in order to show, yeah, no, this we as a community reject his translation. R.H. Charles himself said that this was more of a this was a change to the text based on what he thought it ought to have said, because it's a bit weird that Enoch, he thought it was just a bit weird that Enoch does not recognize the person he's been seeing in his visions as him this entire time. Um, but that can be explained where if chapter 71 is indicating that Enoch is supposed to be transformed into the Son of Man, then it makes sense that he doesn't recognize himself in these visions because he hasn't been transformed yet. And what he sees in his visions is sort of a altered version of himself. But Mason was a scholar and wrote um, and discussed the Book of Enoch in an article, and he writes, "Here we abandon Charles, who has rewritten the rest of the passage in accordance with his view of what Enoch ought to have said. And so that is the reason why people reject it. So it definitely is translated, "You are the Son of Man." And based upon the literary context, we can clearly see that he is identified not just as a human, because son of Ezekiel is referred to as a son of man as well. But in that instance, it just means, human, a human being. But again, based on the literary context, as I've already explained and harped on, it's clear that Enoch is identified as a Messiah. And yes, that would go against the Old Testament, where the Messiah is supposed to be Jewish, not Gentile. And that would certainly go against the New Testament, where the Messiah is supposed to be Jesus, not Enoch. So, yes, this absolutely poses a problem for Old Testament and New Testament believers.
Yeah, it's a really weird choice that taking out the multiple multiple prophecies we see, like for example Zechariah 9, where it says that the Messiah is going to ride a donkey, for example. So why do you think that the author of Enoch, whoever that may be, chose to make Enoch the Messiah? Because it really is a weird choice.
It is a weird choice. I'm not sure. We can't really get into the mind of the author. There is something to say about the fact that the Book of Enoch seems to be written in a obvious context and was written for the community to which it was written to at that time. And it wasn't it wasn't pre-flood humans, it was first century BC Jews. And not all Jews, but
Yeah.
specific Jews. And commentators and scholars on the Enochic text are going to note that. So I think they probably made Enoch the Son of Man, the Messiah, for their own communal and rhetorical goals. But why exactly is not obvious to me, at least.
Mhm. Yeah, and when we look at well, another question I should go on to is, do you think there's any almost inspiration with the Book of Daniel and the Book of Enoch? Because when I was reading the Book of Daniel and then I was reading the Book of Enoch today, it certainly had that kind of I don't know how the word it, almost like inspiration. Like it was very similar to cosmology with the kind of like interesting revelations and things like that. And even like the dating, many scholars will kind of date the Book of Daniel about that age because of that kind of weight of its writing. So do you think there was any inspiration, or do you think that's just more of a coincidence, kind of like a parallel little mania kind of thing?
Um, so if we assume that the book of Daniel does date to around the time of the book of Enoch, then it is possible that they're borrowing from each other. Um, we see parallels between the Book of Enoch and the New Testament. And, Dr. Michael Heiser and R.H. Charles have both demonstrated that. I think R.H. Charles went too far with the parallels, but they certainly are there. I'm not denying that.
Yeah.
Um, so if there is a sort of Enochic inspiration in Daniel, or you know, a or if Daniel inspired Enoch. Uh, Either way, there are definitely similarities between the two, and so I think they are worth studying in tandem, especially if you believe that the book of Daniel does date to the second or first century BC, because that indicates that the book of Enoch, which also does date to around that time frame, is going to be crucial historical background context, which you need for biblical interpretation. So, yeah, there are definitely clearly similarities. Um, and I'm not sure about how we should date the book of Daniel, but I do know Dr. Philip
Yeah.
Long, who wrote a easy to read commentary on the Book of Enoch. I would really encourage you guys to check it out. It's called The Book of Enoch for Beginners. It's on Amazon. Um, uh, he takes the late dating of Daniel, so he would say that the Book of Daniel probably dates the second century BC, and yeah, it is. The Book of Enoch is good background information that's relevant. So, uh, there are relatively conservative evangelical scholars who do hold a late dating to Daniel, and so yeah, it's certainly possible.
Hmm. So we kind of talked a little bit about the angels and like the symbolism around those, but maybe you could go a little bit more in depth on like how the angels are being used, what they're doing there, if that really works with like what we know about angels, that kind of idea.
So you're if I'm understanding the question right, you're asking whether or not the what the Book of Enoch says about angels contradicts or corroborates the Bible.
Yeah, that's what I
Gotcha.
would say.
Yeah. I would say it contradicts, and it contradicts a lot. Um, Now, the Book of Enoch mentioning things that the Bible does not mention would not be a problem, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Because the New Testament does that. I mean, if you read how the New Testament interprets the Old Testament, it's making interesting decisions and it's making additions. The Book of Hebrews tells us that um, Abraham would have thought that that his son would have risen from the dead,
Mhm.
right? Genesis doesn't tell us that, right?
Yeah,
But we're going to say that this is a inspired addition to the story. So Enoch adding ideas about angels is not the problem. The problem, of course, is when they contradict the text,
yeah,
and they most certainly do. So one of the interesting examples that I don't think gets pointed out a lot is that um, in Genesis, we are told that it was the serpent who tempted Eve. And we are also told that again in the New Testament. However, um, in chapter 69, verse 6 of Enoch, we are told that Gadriel is the one that led astray Eve. Now, you could try to argue that Gadriel is Satan, but they're clearly, well, on the one hand, the Book of Enoch doesn't seem to have a very strong concept of the devil,
yeah,
like as a concept, so that's important to note. But secondly, Gadriel seems to be a different angel from how Christians classically think of Satan, because say Gadriel is a person who teaches, is a watcher angel who fell with the rest of these watcher angels and taught humanity things about weapons and armor, according to chapter 69. In Christian theology, and I would argue in the biblical text, this is never indicated about Satan.
yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
in fact, whether or not, regardless of what you think about Satan, he's not a watcher angel
Mhm.
either. So that is also an issue. So there is that contradiction. The Book of Enoch also seems to indicate that angels will be the ones who bring about the flood.
Yeah,
So uh, where is it? Uh, I can try to find it real quick. Um, uh, I can't find it at the moment, but actually, it might be in this section. It's actually one of the internal contradictions because in chapter 54, verse 7, we are told that God will bring the flood and that the waters from under the earth and the sky will be used in the flood.
yeah,
However, in chapter 66, verses 1 and 2, we are told that at the command of God, the angels will be the ones who release all of the forces of the water, which is under the earth, in order to bring judgment and destruction on all of those who reside and dwell upon the dry ground.
I feel like a sort of devil's advocate there. Is it possible that Genesis was merely being a little bit vague? It was only saying that God did it, but in reality, God used the angels to do that. Is that a possible reconciliation, or is that kind of grasping at straws there?
I uh I would say that's grasping for straws. Verse 13 of Genesis 6 will say, God said to Noah, I am going to put an end to all suffering, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. So there is that. Now, some I do think scholars are right to point out, like scholars of the Hebrew Bible are right to point out that there are instances where the Hebrew Bible may not distinguish between like primary and secondary causes. I don't know if you've heard this idea before,
Yeah.
James. Yeah, yeah. So um, so some might say it's possible that God is going to take credit for something that he did not like literally, physically, technically do.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the New Testament also teaches that God is the one who brought the flood. So I think there's agreement across the testaments that he is sort of the primary mover in that narrative. So uh, no, I do think it is a contradiction, and if it'll certainly look like an internal contradiction in Enoch, even if you could reconcile it with Genesis. So. Uh, Another fun thing, this was actually really interesting. Chapter 67, verse 2
Uh,
indicates that angels are the ones who built the ark.
really?
Yeah, yeah.
Really?
But I can go to the passage real quick.
That'd be
Uh,
interesting. Huh.
Say that again.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting. I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, so chapter 67 begins by saying, And in those days the word of the Lord came to me, and he said to me, Noah, behold, your lot has come up before me, a lot without reproach, a lot of love and uprightness. And now the angels are making a wooden structure. And when the angels come out from that task, I will put my hand on it and keep it safe. And a change shall take place so that the dry ground may not remain empty.
Yeah,
So
that's
it
very interesting.
seems, yep. So it seems to be the angels who build the ark, and then God sort of keeps it safe until until the flood occurs, which obviously completely contradicts the Genesis 6, where like the text literally describes the dimensions, right, and the height and length of these parts of the ark and all of that, and God tells Noah this so that he can build it, right.
Yeah.
It'd be really weird, to say the least, if God went through pains of describing that in the text and to Noah, only for angels to have already done that. So
Yeah, that'd be really strange. So I just lost my train of thought here. Um, so speaking on like those kind of like angels, because the Book of Enoch takes that very like almost Heiser view, almost not kind of perspective. So most people are gonna say that like angels are kind of spiritual. They're almost transcendent, but kind of not, kind of thing. So would you say that that kind of view is even plausible with the text and what we know about angels, or do you think it's too vague to say?
the idea that they sort of transcend the physical world.
I mean, like they're the kind of perspective of like angels coming down and producing. If that
Oh,
makes
okay.
sense. They're making the
Uh,
giants.
so I mean, I certainly think um, that's a possible interpretation of Genesis 6, and I think that is what the authors of the Book of Enoch are trying to convey. However, the reason why I cast a little doubt on the Book of Enoch regarding this issue before is that some scholars have argued, based on the text and other evidences, that the narrative in the Book of Enoch is not literally trying to tell you about angels and what they did to women. Um, it's rather a how do I explain this? So you know how let's say for example there is a group of persecuted people by the government. Obviously they cannot explicitly say something because that would get the ire of the government, right? So the way they choose to communicate then is in secret, in code, and that sort of thing.
And with
In
doing with like the it fest and things like that.
Yeah, so apocalyptic literature tends to do this also. So the book of Revelation uses signs and symbols as a means of getting across what the book of Revelation wants to its first century readers, first, second century readers and such. And, you know, a lot of it critiques the Roman Empire, which is not done explicitly, but through signs and symbols. So, a lot of scholars will argue that's what the Book of Enoch is doing with the narrative of the Watcher angels. That the angels are sort of a sign or symbol of people in the Jewish community who defiled the temple, and that's what some scholars are going to argue. You certainly, I will agree that you see the language in the narrative of defilement, of uncleanliness, the kind of language that would be used by priests in ritualistic Jewish contexts. So I will grant that point. I don't know if the original authors um, I'm convinced currently that the original authors wanted us to take this literally
Uh-huh.
in some way. I could be wrong, and I do think scholars have a good point. They certainly bring their evidence, but I think that they probably wanted us to understand this literally.
Mm-hmm.
They tell us that the um, uh, they tell us that the women became the women who married these angels, they became sirens, which, if you don't know, in Greek mythology and other mythologies are basically mermaids. So they do that. This book explains where demons comes from. It tells us that the spirits of the giants are the demons, and thus you'll find in the Dead Sea Scrolls that it will refer to these spirits as quote the bastard spirits, because they are the result of an unholy union, a union that should not have even existed to begin with, and thus they are considered bastards. So the Book of Enoch will use that language as well, that term to describe them.
So
So
those kind of take
as far
literally.
as I can tell, they wanted us to believe that this was literal, but I could be wrong. Like I said, apocalyptic literature is known for using signs and symbols in order to convey something about the context in which the authors are living in. So the Book of Revelation does it, and it is very possible that the Book of Enoch is doing that as well.
So would like the these scholars you were kind of referencing, would they be referencing like these, or would they believe that the Book of Enoch is like saying these evil spirits or like just really bad people or coming out of like, if that makes sense?
Yeah, probably. And that's another reason why I'm skeptical, is because I don't know how far this like symbolism is supposed to go.
Hmm.
It's like, okay, fine, the angels are like priests who defile the temple with, I don't know,
Yeah,
prostitutes or something like that. Okay.
yeah.
Or with, wives or whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
But then, like, what are the demons supposed to be in the symbolism?
Yeah.
Why, what is the journey that Enoch is going on across the cosmos? Um, what is that supposed to symbolize or mean? Um, you know, why Enoch petitions, like, Enoch becomes the intercessor between these fallen watcher angels and God in the text at one point. What is that supposed to symbolically convey? Right.
Mhm.
So, it seems to, like, if it's symbolism, I don't know how to explain what's going on there. So that's kind of part of my skepticism.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. I just can't imagine because, like I said earlier, I did read a little bit of it, and that kind of suspected this would. I mean, obviously, I don't know all the context of this book, but it would just seem like a really like weird thing to push on the text. But again, I don't know everything.
Yeah,
Um,
it would be, to me, at least,
yeah,
it's weirder to read it symbolically than literally, which is weird because obviously the literal
yeah.
narrative is obviously fantastical, but uh yeah, so I'm currently skeptical of that view. But I would, yeah, like I said, I would encourage you guys to research it. Again, given some of the language that's used in the narrative, and given the fact this is apocalyptic literature, there is a case to be made for symbolism in the text for sure.
So, why do you think many Jews? I think it was only one sect actually that took it, but why do you think that sect specifically decided to take this text if we know it is pretty contradictory to the actual Testament?
Uh, Honestly, I don't know. Uh, So I know that there might have been some Jews who took the text as inspired in the ancient world. And as far as I'm aware today, Ethiopian Jews do use the Book of Enoch as scripture, however they understand the concept of scripture
Yeah,
and inspiration. Uh, but it is very contradictory, as I pointed out. There are more contradictions that I point out. There are internal inconsistencies with the text as well. So I'm not I'm not really sure.
yeah, that's
Um,
fair. Yeah,
but to be fair, the period between about 400, 300 BC to right around the birth of Christ, um, this starts happening. You start
yeah.
seeing Jewish communities and people who are writing stuff in the name of Old Testament characters, and we know that they didn't write it. So you get stuff like the Book of Giants, you get stuff like the Coming of Melchizedek, things like the Testament of Moses, I
Oh yeah, I've
believe,
heard.
dates to this time. Yeah. The Apocalypse of Abraham, I believe, also dates to around this time. There are a lot of different stuff. And then, if you want to count the stuff that happens after Christ is born, then I
Yeah.
mean, you get
Hmm.
stuff like the Testament of Solomon, the Odes of Solomon, the a lot of different things. A New Testament um, stuff as well, like the Apocalypse of Peter and all that. So um, I think it just became a thing, you might say,
Yeah.
to use these biblical characters as a means of conveying the messages that you wanted to convey.
Mhm. Do you think it's possible that it was just a group of Jews that were kind of almost desperate to have a Messiah in a sort of way, as to not lose faith, or do you think it was just literally kind of this person who maybe was a little bit drunk, or maybe they were just kind of writing to write? I don't know.
I'm like I said, I am not sure. Um,
Hmm.
if we take, especially if we take into account the sort of symbolic interpretation that I mentioned earlier of the narrative of the Watchers, then the authors are trying to critique a certain group of Jews who are
There's my pants.
defiling the temple, defiling the Mosaic law, and are
Yeah.
going to suffer judgment and condemnation as a result of it. But they, the righteous, the enlightened, the holy ones, are going to be justified on the day of calamity and on the day of judgment, and they are
Uh-huh.
going to be with the great and righteous chosen one who sits on a throne next to the Ancient of Days. So as David Wilbur will say, they probably thought of themselves as being the last generation before the great day. Um, so they were probably apocalyptic Jews, which is probably why the text is apocalyptic, is because they really thought this stuff was going to happen soon. So, and use stuff like the flood, use stuff like the narrative of the Watchers as a way of getting across those messages.
Mhm. That's interesting. Um, so I guess one more thing we could touch on real quick is why do you think that the Book of Jude does quote Enoch? Do you think that's like specifically? Because I know some people argue that it's not actually quoting that. Some people say it is. What do you think about that?
So this is going to be a hot take. Uh, so this is
I
gonna this
love those.
you're about to get a hot take. So for the people who do not know, one of the biggest arguments for the Book of Enoch's inclusion into the biblical canon is this idea that the Book of Jude is actually quoting the Book of Enoch. So let's go over the quotes real quick so that your listeners could under kind of see why someone would say that.
Uh-huh.
So Jude 14 through 15 says, "It was also about these that Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied, saying, Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment on all and to convict all the ungodly of all their deeds of ungodliness that they have committed in such an ungodly way, and of all the harsh things that ungodly sinners have spoken against him." That's Jude 14 through 15 in the ESV. Um, uh, Enoch chapter 1 verse 9 as translated by Nib, I believe is how you say it. Nib. I don't think it's Knib. Um,
Mhm.
uh, so here it says, "And behold, he comes with 10,000 holy ones to execute judgment upon them and to destroy the impious and to contend with all flesh concerning everything that the sinners and impious have done and wrought against him." Uh, Jerome was a church father who is very well known for having translated the Bible, including some books that Protestants do not believe are inspired, into Latin and is what we now know as the Latin Vulgate. Well, Jerome, in one of his books, says that Jude, the brother of James, left a short epistle which is reckoned among the seven universal epistles or Catholic epistles. And because in it he quotes from the apocryphal book of Enoch, it is rejected by many. Nevertheless, by age and use, it has gained authority and is reckoned among the Holy Scriptures.
Interesting.
So Jude, uh, Jerome is attesting to the fact that people have even rejected the Book of Jude because they thought it was quoting from the Book of Enoch, and they should reject the Book of Enoch.
Mhm.
So, with that background in mind, and with the quoting of Jude and such, I'm gonna argue again, hot take. I don't think Jude is quoting Enoch.
Mhm.
So let me give a few reasons as to why. Um, if you look at the Cambridge Bible Commentary and also the footnotes in the New English Translation, they actually cast doubt on how obvious it is that Jude is quoting First Enoch. One of the reasons is because the phrase "the harsh things that ungodly sinners have spoken against him" is a phrase that appears in the book of Jude, and that phrase is absent in the Ge'ez or Ethiopian version of the book of Enoch.
Mhm.
So there is an entire sentence that is missing from the Enochic text, again, the Ge'ez translation thereof, that appears in Jude.
Interesting.
So even in English with a certain Book of Enoch translation, you can see that. But furthermore, I read a commentary by Philip Kaiser, and he compares the Book of Enoch, like this particular verse I read, chapter 1,
Yeah.
verse 9, in Greek, Latin, Syriac, Ethiopian or Ge'ez, and Aramaic
Wow.
because we have manuscripts of the Book of Enoch in all of those languages. So he compares verse chapter 1, verse 9 in all those languages to the Book of Enoch, and he writes in his conclusion, in my opinion, there is absolutely no way that this could be a quote. Furthermore, in a footnote, he says, no matter which version is compared, it is crystal clear that Jude is not directly quoting any of them.
Wow.
Yep.
Do you think it's
A very,
possible they're
a
both
very,
quoting? Sorry.
say that again.
So do you think it's possible they're both quoting a specific source, or do you think it's not a quote at all?
Um, it's probably a tradition.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a tradition that Enoch, that Jude is referring to. Um, I'm not sure if that's the case either, but
Mm-hmm.
that's at least a possibility. Uh, I don't know if you or your audience has heard of a New Testament scholar named Douglas Moo.
I think so. At least it sounds familiar. I don't know if I've read any of his works though.
Yep. So Douglas Moo also talks about this, and what he says casts some doubt on this as well. He says, but we do find almost these exact words in a Jewish intertestamental book, 1 Enoch. Also, after this, he mentions in a footnote, scholars debate about which of the versions Jude might be quoting. Most think that whatever version he knew, he is doing his own paraphrase in Greek.
Okay.
And so I think, based upon everything I've just mentioned, I think that we have good reason to cast doubt on the idea that Jude is quoting the Book of Enoch. At best, it's a paraphrase, which is fine. I mean, you can paraphrase things for your sort of purpose, um, but I don't think he's certainly not directly quoting any of them.
Interesting.
Now, uh,
Must be weird for him since he would acknowledge that Jesus is the Messiah too. So it'd be weird for him to commit that as authoritative in the first place.
yes, right, exactly. Now, if that argument is bust, if my
Yeah.
argument that Jude is not quoting Peter or that Jude is not quoting Enoch is terrible, what do we do
Yeah.
then? Right? What do we do then?
Uh-huh.
Especially because the text says Enoch prophesied, saying,
Hmm.
right? He seems to give this some prophetic weight. So what is happening here? Well, um, Peter Gentry and Andrew Fountain would say that the literary structure in Jude clearly separates examples drawn from canonical scripture and those drawn from non-canonical or extra-biblical Jewish traditions. The reference in Jude 6 is clearly now Jude 6, he's talking about something uh, different, but he's alluding to this verse to make a point.
Hmm.
The reference in Jude 6 is clearly to Genesis 6, 1 through 4, and cannot be shown to be dependent on the speculative material that became the Book of Watchers. The Book of Watchers is chapters 1 through 36 of the Book of Enoch. This is further supported by the relationship between 2 Peter 2, 1 through 9, and Jude, wherein Peter cites only canonical examples.
Hmm.
So they're going to argue that um, there's a literary structure that we find in the book of Jude that distinguishes between non-canonical literature and the canonical literature. And this is, I think, could support the idea that um, that the book of Jude is actually not citing this because it's scripture. Rather, he's citing it as a rhetorical attack against false teachers. So, if you read the book of Jude, it's clear the entire book of Jude is meant as an attack against these. these sinning false teachers, and uh, both in what they teach and in what they do, they are ungodly. And that's very, very obvious. And the whole point is that God is going to judge them for what they've done. Now, uh, so he could be quoting the book of Enoch, not as inspired scripture, but because its audience valued the book and its traditions, and he wanted to show that not only does scripture agree with me, the canonical scriptures, it would be like him saying, yeah, look, these scriptures agree with me, but even your literature agrees with me that what you're doing is wrong and you will come under judgment. So it's
And
sort of a solid rhetorical tactic rather than a affirmation of inspiration. So
mhm,
if I was wrong and insane Jew does not quote Enoch, at least
uh-huh,
the Book of Enoch, that's the route I would go.
mhm. I think that's fair. Um, I don't have any more questions really in my mind. So, is there anything you want to go through or go expand on? Maybe some more of those contradictions, or is there something else that you had in mind?
Yeah, I think that it's really unfortunate that the Book of Enoch has been used to support
Mm.
um, a lot of different conspiracy theories,
Yeah.
like a lot. So I wanted to take some time to mention something really important. Two things. So, conspiracy theories that uh, what am I trying to say here? There are certain conspiracy theories around scientific ideas, such as the age of the Earth, whether or not the Earth is flat, um, uh, uh, the sort of bones that we find in the Earth. Some people think it was, giants, various other things, right?
Yeah.
Now, people have also used the Book of Enoch to confirm these. There are even racial conspiracy theories I've seen. I've heard people say the giants in the one Enoch are the ancestors of black people. I've
Oh,
seen, and that was
everything.
from a black person. It was crazy.
Oh,
I've heard people argue that Noah was a white man. I've heard people say Enoch teaches us that Enoch himself was a black man. Um,
sorry.
I've heard people say that the book describes Enoch on a journey to Antarctica and
Well,
seeing all these weird things. Yeah, it's
that
crazy, dude. It's crazy.
how on earth do they interpret that he's going to Antarctica? Like out of all things.
Uh,
What?
that is a very valid question. I've seen people say that the church took out the Book of Enoch for for political and for political reasons, basically to establish power and authority within the Roman Empire. That Constantine had a hand in taking out the biblical,
Always that
the
Constantine. Always that
big,
Constantine.
yeah, yeah. So there are a lot of conspiracy theories that have been wrapped up about this text, and I just want to say um, the Book of Enoch is not where you want to go for this. It's really not.
Yeah.
But so in particular with the scientific inaccuracy, particularly with the scientific conspiracy theories, I want to say those people who hold to those conspiracy theories, they have one or two options. Um, they can uh, either the Book of Enoch is just wrong about science. And it says a lot of things about science. One of the biggest claims that I broke down in my research was the Book of Enoch claims that the sun and the moon are the same size, and it's
I
not.
don't know about that one.
Yeah, the sun is 400 times bigger
Yeah,
than the
it's
moon.
still a little bit bigger. So it's such a
Yeah,
nitpick.
yeah. I don't know why I'm nitpicking. Honestly, I'm sorry. No.
Yeah, can't believe you.
so So either and it probably does teach a flat earth and some other things. So you can either uh, you know, agree that the Book of Enoch has these scientific inaccuracies, but
Yeah.
see that the scientific evidence clearly supports the opposite of what the Book of Enoch says, and come around to accepting the science, or uh, or lose your conspiracy theories and accept that the Book of Enoch teaches what Dr. Philip Long refers to as a sacred geography.
Hmm.
So the idea is that so he gives an example. I don't remember if this is in his book, but in our private conversations, he's given this example where he'll say, if you have a map of the medieval world that the Crusaders used, Jerusalem will be the center of the earth. Not because
Yeah.
they thought it actually was, but because Jerusalem is the most sacred place in the world to them, and as such, it is the main focal point. Uh, uh, is the main focal point, and as such, it's the center of the world. So, in the same way, Dr. Phil Long has said that this is happening both in the Old Testament, geography in the Old Testament, and he's going to argue that sacred geography is at play in the Book of Enoch. So when the Book of Enoch is describing, um, Enoch's journey around the cosmos, and he's seeing the sun and these cycles and all these different sorts of things, that the text is trying to get at a theological or spiritual purpose. Its purpose is not to tell you literal science. And the purpose would be then to demonstrate the orderliness that God has in the universe, to demonstrate God's sovereignty over the universe, to argue that angelic beings have control in the universe, or even that the universe is evidence of a creator, as
Yeah.
Christians are going to argue philosophically. So those would be the purposes, and if that's true, if Dr. Phil Long is right about that, then conspiracy theorists cannot use the Book of Enoch to defend their scientific conspiracies, because the text, in its original context, again, if Dr. Philip Long is right, is not trying to comment on that stuff. So
Yeah.
either either the Book of Enoch is just wrong about science and these conspiracy theories are wrong, or the Book of Enoch is using sacred geography and you cannot use the Enochic text as evidence for your conspiracies. So also
Yeah.
this also includes stuff about aliens and global warming. The Book of Enoch does not talk about aliens and it does not talk about global warming. Um, and again, you are engaging in
I've
bad
heard about this global
exegesis.
warming.
Sorry,
Mhm.
you froze up a
Yeah, that's
little
really
again.
bizarre. Oh, did I? I haven't heard about
Can
the
you?
global warming thing. Uh,
Yeah, bro, I've been down this rabbit hole. I've definitely been down this rabbit hole.
yeah,
People
I
have
have
said a
that.
lot of things. You want to know one of the strangest things I've ever heard though about? You want to know one of the strangest things I've ever heard?
I do.
So part of the reason why people call this book one Enoch is because scholars
Uh-huh.
differentiate between three different books that where Enoch is the main character. Second Enoch, and
Yeah.
again, these are not sequels to each other, by the way. They are different books with different beliefs. But Second Enoch talks Enoch is the main character, but it focuses on him sort of becoming priest and um, uh, a sort of he becomes the first priest of heaven, and he becomes the sort of the originator from which the Melchizedekian priesthood derives as well.
Really weird. Hmm.
Yeah, so
Um, do all these three books date about the same time, or is the second one a little bit earlier, or are they all just really the second century BC kind of thing?
they're later. So the first book of Enoch is 300 BC to 50 AD. The second book of Enoch is first to early second century AD, and then the third book of Enoch is like 580.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
So
but if
I'm
you,
crazy, but I don't think Enoch wrote that one. Maybe,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. So, so,
Ooh.
there was a get this, there was a um Unitarian scholar
Oh,
or Unitarian pastor named Dr. Charles Potter who believed that Jesus Christ wrote Second Enoch.
what? That
Yes, I'm pretty sure he has an entire book defending this point.
you're joking. That's.
I'm telling you, dude. Um,
I'm sorry, man. I don't think I believe you on this one.
oh yeah,
That
no, definitely, definitely not. Um,
how would he even
um,
believe that? That is so out there.
yeah, yeah, um, yeah.
Wow.
It's pretty silly.
Yeah.
Um,
Hell. How
I would have
there's
to find the source for that, but like I said, I have a bunch of notes that I've taken just from years of my study into this. Um, yeah, Dr. Bart Ehrman, in one of the blogs that he wrote,
yeah.
mentions that Dr. Charles Potter thought that Jesus wrote Second Enoch.
uh, that
Well,
is an
wait,
idea.
is it? Um, hold on. No, I'm sorry. It was a comment under his blog. My apologies. But yeah, um, yeah, um,
Is
it's very,
really
very
weird.
good. But yeah, that's probably the weirdest thing I've heard. That's
Yeah.
probably the weirdest thing I've heard with it.
Uh, well, part of me wants to just buy that book just to read that. That's just. I really hope it's like satirical or something. Like that's what I'm gonna hope.
No, I'm pretty sure he was serious. He wrote a book called The Lost Years of Jesus.
Oh,
Yeah,
I've heard.
Lost Years of Jesus Revealed by Dr. Charles F. Potter. And in there um yeah, I'm pretty sure it's in there where he references this idea. Yeah, it's
I'm
weird.
sure it's a very credible book. Has so many scholars on it and all that good stuff. I'm sure.
Oh, obviously. I mean, are you kidding me? What scholar wouldn't support this book?
Of course, it's the most common belief ever, and that is something.
Um, oh, I think I know where why this is in my notes. Have you ever heard of the Religion for Breakfast YouTube channel?
Oh yeah, I'm not a big fan.
Really?
No,
Why
I've
not?
watched a few of his. I haven't watched a few of his videos, and been very. They've either like specifically criticized Christianity and kind of strawmanned it a bit, or they've just been blatantly wrong about details. So I used to be a little bit into them, but then I just started looking into the stuff, and they're like, "That's not right. That's not right. I don't know."
Oh, well, that's I'm gonna have to say that's a hot take. I definitely think they're
Really?
wrong
I don't know.
about certain things with regards to scripture and the gospels, but I think they do a lot of good research. Their explanation, by the way, guys, they have a three-part series on each book of Enoch, and
Oh, really?
it's their video on Second Enoch that I found that yeah they referenced Charles Potter in there, just saying that he believed this. Um,
Yeah, that's
they
really.
uh, they have a video on the origins of Lilith, which was pretty good. They give very good evidence and quote primary sources. for the very recent development that was Christmas trees. Um, I thought their I thought their videos on Buddhism and Taoism and some other things were really good. So um, yeah, check it out. See what you guys think. But either way, they did some good stuff on the Book of Enoch, and they're one of the more academic, less ridiculous uh, uh, channels out there that have addressed the Book of Enoch. So,
That's good.
yo, but yeah, no, I've seen the conspiracy theories on YouTube for years and on um, TikTok as well. And
Yeah.
I remember I think the video is deleted now. I'm pretty sure it is. But one of the videos that is gone from my account now was a video where I was responding to a woman who claimed that the Book of Enoch um, uh, taught the idea that mountains aren't real.
Cool.
Yeah, so
uh,
mountains aren't real. What they instead
oh, really?
are are ginormous tree stumps that the
Wait, like all mountains,
giants.
or just like what are they called? Um, like the ones that are like kind of like squares. What are they called?
I don't remember. I'm blanking.
Uh,
But yeah, so
yeah.
according to her, they were giant tree stumps that the giants used to do stuff with, I guess. Um,
Oh, that's
maybe
quite the
they're the
idea.
ones who built the ark. I don't know. Actually, that might have been the idea. Is that they were trying to build an ark of their own, so they cut down these gigantic trees, and so that's what we now know as mountains. But like mountains, as described by science currently, aren't real.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure those are actually just stone. Not exactly trees.
Yeah.
I might be a conspiracy theorist. I don't know, man.
I'm telling you, Bo, this idea that the Book of Enoch somehow tells the true origins of humanity and why things are the way they are today is, excuse me,
Yeah.
is a very prevalent idea. Sling and Stone. I have to respond to their other video too. Sling and Stone made a video defending the Book of Enoch and stuff like that. But the Sling and Stone TikTok account also released a video uh, um, on the Book of Giants, argued that the Book of Giants was scripture. But not only that, you know how I told you that the Book of Giants has monsters and giants in it, right? Because of what the angels did. So they're going to argue
Hmm.
that the angels engaged in what was it? Altering the genetics of creatures,
Oh,
and that now
like
humans
scientists?
are trying to do what angels did in the past by altering our genetics to create monsters.
Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know if I buy that one.
I think it makes
That's
sense.
really bizarre.
I think it makes sense when you think about it.
Another hot take.
No, um, no, it was
Ugh.
something ridiculous like that. I think CERN had something to do with it. Yeah, I'm
Oh,
gonna make a response for my Christian Stop Being Goofy series. Shameless plug. Please
like
check out that series if you want to know why Doja Cat dresses
shameless.
like if you want to know why Doja Cat dresses up like a demon, autism is a generational curse,
Oh,
and one of the funniest ones is that if you engage in self pleasure, you are engaging in witchcraft. Um, check out uh, my Christian Stop Being Goofy playlist. It's great
that's a
stuff.
great series, guys.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I'd like to see that
So
one.
if you guys want more information about the Book of Enoch, please follow me. I will be talking about it a lot. I'm going to be making YouTube videos responding to people about it. I'm going to be making more TikToks about the text. I have an article I'm writing that's going to be published on James's website, followsofshepherd.org, so you guys can check that out. One of the cool things
I'm
is
so
though is
excited.
that yes, me too. One of the cool things though is that I've done is I've referenced Dr. Philip Long a few times because again he wrote a book called The Book of Enoch for Beginners. It's basically a commentary and a study guide on the text. So I would encourage you guys to check that out. But um, in but he teaches at the university I go to. So I go to Grace Christian University,
Really?
and he's a professor here. So I actually got the book for free.
Wow, that's
Which is
cool.
great. Yeah. And I interviewed him for a series that was originally published to TikTok, but since I've expanded, it's published on all my platforms. Um,
Really?
so
What's
yep,
that one?
so it's an 8-part series where I ask him questions about the Book of Enoch, and he basically gives his sort of scholarly take on certain things. So if you're interested in that, we talk about second and third Enoch. Did the church suppress the Book of Enoch at all? Is
Yeah.
Enoch scripture? I think we've already addressed that, but if you want his take, then you can check out my 8-part series interview with Enochic scholar for more on that as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, let me see. But yeah, so is there anywhere else you would like to go with this discussion regarding the text?
I finished all my notes, so nothing's really specifically coming to mind. Hmm, should see if my brain generates anything. I don't think so.
Okay, cool. Then yeah, that's all I got for you then. Like I said, check out some of the stuff that I'll be doing here with the text in the future. Check out that playlist. I'm really happy that Dr. Phil Long did that for me. It was sort of a really cool thing I was able to do early on. And it was able to get actual scholarship and academic resources freely available to people. Like I say, go check out his book. It's cheap. Book's cheap, so it's not that much. But this during the series was cool because, like I said, I was able to get a free resource out there to people. Again, rather than this, sort of ridiculous conspiracy stuff
Yeah.
involving the text. So, yeah, I definitely hope that series continues to do some good for people who were in the position that I was in 8th grade, right, where I did not know why we had, you know, the books in the Bible that we had, and I didn't know why the church took out the Book of Enoch, or even if it did. Spoiler alert, it didn't, but I didn't know the answer to those questions, and so there was
Yeah.
definitely sort of kind of a worry or anxiety. So I want to be able to help quell those. So
Yeah. It's good. That's definitely good motivation.
yeah, yeah, definitely. But yeah, so if anyone in the comments or anyone viewing this has any questions, I would love to me and James would love to take them if anyone has any.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not sure how many viewers we're at right now, but hopefully there's some questions out there.
Yep. If not, that's cool. Like I said, I article will be published. I got resources, so go check those out for sure.
Did you plan on making only one article on it, or do you plan on making multiple? I think you said multiple, but I don't remember
It'll,
precisely.
it'll definitely be multiple. Uh,
Nice.
there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so it'll definitely be
I better
multiple.
get that
Um,
article of Jesus for a second. No,
yeah. So this article is just a quick. I wanted to get something quick out there that people could see. It uses academic resources, and so it's um, the arguments are backed up by evidence and scholarship. So I just wanted something like that in a quick blurb to quickly address the question: is the Book of Enoch scripture? So I give an introduction as to why I care, uh, an introduction to the text itself, and then two arguments as to why it's not scripture, and then a conclusion. So yeah, you can check that out. We'll definitely talk about more in the future. There are a lot more arguments than the two I provided against against it
Yeah.
being in the canon. Uh, and also, I'm not like a commentary on the text or anything like that. So James Van de Kamp's, I believe it's James Van de Kamp's Hermenia series on the Book of Enoch um, is a good resource. Again, Dr. Phil Long's a great resource. I think Dr. Michael Heiser has a commentary on the Book of Enoch.
So I
Um,
would be surprised if he didn't. He talks about it a lot.
yeah, yeah. So I definitely check out Dr. Michael Heiser on the text too if you're interested. I uh, I would recommend Dr. Phil Long just because the book that he has is very easy to read, like incredibly easy. So if you're, and easy, even as someone who had been studying this for years, I learned a couple new things from his book. So I think that whether you're just starting off, I think this is best if you're just starting off. But whether you're just starting off or been looking into this for a while, I think you'd get something out of it. And like I said, it's super easy to read. So, but yeah, so those are some other resources too you can check out.
Yeah, that's good.
Um, yeah, if no one has any questions or comments or anything like that, then that's everything I have at least.
Yeah, I think so too. So, I guess we can off now. Head off now. We've been on for an hour and a half, so that's a pretty big live stream.
Yes.
So thank you all for coming though. Like, I had a great time. I'm sure he did as well. And once again, make sure you follow him. He has great content. Not as great as mine, of course, but it's almost as good, So be sure to check that out. um, but I guess that's all we got for today. So